less.
Staying dry with a few isolated showers in parts of Ulster, North Leinster and in the southeast. Highest temperatures of 10 to 14 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
You're very welcome back to Saturday's Off the Ball. It's a specially extended edition of Off the Ball because we've got live match commentary of Leinster against Saracens in the Champions Cup final. It's a 5 o'clock kickoff. And we'll get over to Conor Morris in just a moment. Kieran Cunningham is still with me in studio. Gary Breen's on the line, and Kevin Kilbane is also going to join us in just a moment. You can text us using the text number 53106. It'll cost you 30 cents per message. You can tweet us as well at Off the Ball. And a very good afternoon as well to our YouTube, to our Facebook and to our Periscope viewers. You can comment on the stream below if you've anything you want to get off your chest. Already this afternoon, Aston Villa have beaten West Brom 2-1 in the first leg of their playoff encounter at Villa Park. Derby County take on Leeds United at 5:15. But the big sporting event this evening, really from an Irish perspective, I think it's fair to say, is at St James's Park in Newcastle. Conor Morris is still there for us. And Conor, I presume things this morning, as you mentioned already, it's all blue really around Newcastle. Have you seen many Saracens fans around the city this morning? Is it really a sense that the Leinster fans are going to completely outvoice them this evening?
Yeah, I would imagine so, to be honest, Eoin. No great kind of visibility in terms of Saracen fans at this point. And certainly that was the case, if you recall, in Coventry at the Ricoh Arena, where I think they brought fewer than 4,000 fans, and that might even be generous. I'm sure those that do travel will be quite vocal. There's also going to be, of course, as there is with any final, a huge amount of neutrals, and we really think it's going to be a game that neutrals can kind of invest in. High octane, huge physicality, brutal game. But yeah, I would imagine that the Leinster contingent will, as they frequently on their travels around Europe, like Munster in many senses, bring huge numbers and a vociferous support.
How big is the context of this game in terms of crowning the team of the decade or the kind of general greatness of either of these teams? Because Alan Quinlan was saying with us on yesterday morning show about the idea that he still thinks Toulon are probably the team of the decade. It's going to be very, very hard to argue against the fact that Leinster are if they win this evening.
Yeah, I agree. I take Quinny's sentiment. I mean, to win 3 in a row with the Galacticos in the squad that they had. But I think if today's game lives up to all the hype and all the pre-match expectation, and a team deservedly comes out on top and maybe even wins convincingly, it's going to be very difficult not to say that they are the team of the decade when you consider the talent on show and the way they've dominated both domestically and in terms of European games over the last couple of seasons. It's a game everyone wants to be at. Like I'm sitting in the commentary box, and from where I'm sat at the moment, I can see Brian Abana, Lawrence Dallaglio, Sam Warburton, Brian O'Driscoll. I mean, everyone is here going through their pre-match rehearsals for the various media outlets, and you just get a sense that, 60 minutes in, if this game is still in the balance, this could be, I know it's a cliche, but a final for the ages, so to speak. Yeah, for sure. And if there's one thing that this week taught us in sport in general, sometimes if you put the elite against the elite, you get the most magnificent sporting occasion you possibly can imagine. And I don't want to put too much pressure on this evening's spectacle, Conor, but that is a distinct possibility. Yeah, and look, if we can have, if we can hold a torch to any of those games in terms of drama and comebacks, and Leinster have had their fair share of comebacks in European finals. You think back to the Northampton game. They won't want that to be the case today. I mean, this Saracens team, if they can build the lead, if they can get Owen Farrell with the ball on the kicking tee and build the lead through penalties and pressure, they're a very, very smart team. Mark McCall has them drilled so well. They turn their opponents around, they ping the corners, they force you back, they make the pitch very, very big. It's a long way to come back and counter-attack against this Saracens team. So Leinster will need to start pretty well. They'll be expecting box kicks. The ball will be in the air. We'll see that line speed. We'll see the kick chase of Liam Williams and Alex Good and Sam Maitland. There's going to be a huge amount of pressure in the opening 10 or 15 minutes. There's also going to be a real little kind of snapshot for how the game's going to be officiated from Jerome Garces. He's going to be under a lot of pressure in the opening 10 or 15 minutes to give a picture to players as to what they're going to get away with in terms of the offside line, which really he didn't pay too much heed to at the Ricoh Arena for the Munster game. Munster fans will tell you all about that, and also what is going to be what you can get away with at the breakdown. That's going to be a crucial. I mean, we could have 400 rucks this afternoon. Jerome Garr says he's going to make mistakes. He can't be expected, even with his ARs, to get those all correct. And when you've got Johnny Sexton with 92% goal kicking stats and Owen Farrell 89 on the pitch, teams know that. Teams will play on the edge, and in certain areas of the pitch, i.e. within kicking range, they'll be going all out to try and get in the referee's ear and give a picture as to why they should be winning penalties.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be a big element of all of this this evening. Good stuff, Conor. We'll chat to you again in an hour. And as I've been saying, Andy Dunn and Keith Wood are part of the commentary team. Live commentary from 5 o'clock in Newcastle this evening for that one. Live commentary, of course, from both grounds tomorrow, depending on which way it goes on the final day of the Premier League season, from the Amex Stadium and from Anfield. And really, if there's any group of pundits that are going to be happy that a certain team wins tomorrow, it's going to be Liverpool pundits, according to Pep Guardiola. And Jamie Carragher's column in The Telegraph this morning kind of disagrees with that, talks about the presence of ex-Liverpool and ex-Manchester United professionals in the media, which is fair enough given their level of success, particularly United's perspective in recent times. But he's making the point that if there were more Manchester City pundits in the media, there would be more anti-Manchester United, Manchester City sentiment, because, you know, familiarity breeds contempt and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Possibly, but you know, this goes back a long time. I remember Alex Ferguson bringing this up years ago when Mark Lawrence and Alan Hansen were fixtures in Match of the Day, that the media was dominated by ex-Liverpool players and they set the agenda. But I read that Carrick column and I thought he made a fair point as well, that ex-players are often very critical of their former club when things aren't going well. And he was, he pointed out things that he was very critical of certain periods in the Klopp regime, and I think before that as well. And you know, Gary Neville is obviously a United fanatic, but he hasn't been slow to put the boot into the club at different times. Like he did say, you know, the you little dancer thing when Salah scored or the own goal, was it against Tottenham? He said he's embarrassed by that, and I think that's something that was a fan moment. He forgot that he was a commentator, but. You know, he's played over 700 games for Liverpool. He never played for anybody else. I think people get that he wants Liverpool to win. I think they accept that. But I think he's still a very good pundit, you know. So. Gary,
are you more harsh when it comes to your former teams?
I don't know, really. I think I'm probably harsher on Arsenal, even though I never played for them, but because I grew up supporting them. And Owen, you'll know at times, I've said this quite often, they'll break your heart. And
they give you plenty to be harsh about, Gary.
Well, listen, this is the thing, and what was interesting, what Kieran's saying there about Gary Neville, and I haven't seen much of him, but I see him talking about saying, as a Manchester United fan, at times he doesn't even like this group of players, and I could understand it. It really resonated with me then in terms of watching Arsenal over the last 5 or 6 seasons, where I'm thinking, in terms of everything I grew up with, and I know the mid-'80s wasn't as expansive, and the Wenger years were totally different to George Graham's, but the balance from taking over George Graham's team and then implementing his style was perfect. The more it went away from George Graham, more went to Wenger's style. Is the problem that Arsenal had, that they lacked that steel, and they've lacked that steel since. And that's why you probably look at Arsenal, and that's a frustration watching them defensively, that they're just not at the level you normally associate with top Arsenal players.
Yeah, I think we've got Kevin Kilbane with us on the line as well this afternoon. Kevin, what's your take on the idea that there's a very pro-Liverpool sentiment in the media this season?
Hi, Owen. How are you keeping? I think it's been the case with Liverpool for a long time. Hansen, Lawrenson, they've been around it now for such a long time, hasn't it? So that's been the argument that's been levelled against Liverpool for such a long time. I think it's put more pressure on Liverpool over the years, just as now there's a lot more pressure on Man United with the ex-Man United players that have constantly been within the media over the last few years. And particularly when they've not been going well. Liverpool over the years, when things haven't been going well for them, who've they turned to? They've turned to multiple First Division winners in Souness, Lawrenson, Hansen, whoever it would be. And now it's the same with United, isn't it? I think United are looking at another at least 3 or 4 years before they're seriously going to go and get back challenging. I'd say probably beyond that. I think you could be looking at another Liverpool in 15, 20 years' time in the same position that Liverpool are in now, desperate to win, but there's pressure that's always going to be put on them from former players that are constantly talking about how they were serial winners and what they were doing to get these wins on the board, when realistically, I mean, you can't say Liverpool's season hasn't been a success, even if they don't win the Premier League or the Champions League. You look at it in terms of trophies, that's what it's all about. But if they get 97 points and don't win the Premier League, that's been an unbelievable season, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think Kev makes a good point there as well about the pressure that having so many ex-players in the media can have in a club as well, because I think it's in Carragher's column he mentioned this, or I might have read it somewhere else, but he remembered going into the office one day to meet Gerard Houllier, and Gerard Houllier was actually compiling a list of ex-Liverpool players in the media. And, because they were getting to him, and Carragher was thinking, like, why does he care? But he says, now I can see why it could be putting pressure on. And I think there's a part of that at United, because particularly these guys who are the self-described class of 92, they have a lot of clout, there's a lot of them in the media. And I know Mourinho in particular suspected they had an agenda, or they were playing a long game in terms of getting some kind of involvement in the club of whatever shape or form, but in a way it might help City that that when they go looking for Sky or putting on Sean Goater or there's not or Joe Hart, there's not a standing army of ex-City players. They're kind of fishing around, say, who do we put in here? It mightn't actually be helping Liverpool or United that there's so many in the media.
No, I can't imagine it does, especially if they're paying that level of attention to, which I doubt they are. I doubt there's too many people on the Houllier level of it. Kev, there's one, and Gary as well, I want to get your take on both of this. We were going to play this clip from AM yesterday morning, but I think it's better if you just tell us again, Kev. We were talking about Matthijs de Ligt and his potential in the Premier League, which is a bit more nuanced than just being an outstanding football player, isn't it, Kevin? I don't want to speak for you, so you might just say what you're thinking about de Ligt.
You're asking me now because Breen is a big fan. That's what it is. Watching him this week was a bit of an eye opener for me. Someone had said to me a couple of weeks ago that had went to watch de Ligt playing domestically that they think he'd struggle in the Premier League. The reason being is that everything. Even when I've watched Ajax, I know that Gary's watched a lot of Ajax over the last few years. Everything is in front of him. If he's usually stepping onto balls, constant sides or sides constantly, unless it's PSV or maybe one or two other sides in the Dutch division, sit off and allow the ball to be played drop off to stop sides or prevent sides getting in behind them. So everything's in front of de Ligt. De Ligt is a sort of player that likes to come out with the ball. He's fantastic in possession. Everything that's played down the side of him, he controls quite well. But something that was said to me, and you certainly noticed it with Llorente midweek, when a player plays touch tight with him, likes to back into him, likes to roll him around the penalty area, he struggled with it. Every high ball that went anywhere near him, he struggled with it badly. And that suggested to me that he would struggle against a Glenn Murray, struggle against an Ashley Barnes, that type of player. I mentioned the player yesterday when we'd signed him. I couldn't remember his name off the top of my head. It was Coldrop. We signed him for $5 million. It was probably about 2005, I think it was now, maybe even 2006. We signed him, come in on massive money. And all of a sudden, everything in front of him was great. Playing in training, keep ball sessions, not a bother at all. But he could not handle a player that just backed into him, that his sole purpose was, when the ball's in flight, I'm going to go and find my man, I'm going to go and back into him, I'm going to try and roll him around the penalty area. He couldn't deal with youth team players that was coming up against him in training. So it suggested to me what Llorente did to him the other night, that I think, I'm not necessarily saying, and I was saying this as well, I'm not saying he wouldn't be a success long term, it's something that he'd have to learn, but I think if he came into the Premier League, I think he'd struggle initially with that type of player playing up against him.
Gary, what's your thoughts on that?
And listen, I heard Kevin's thoughts and I agreed with him 100%. I could see what he was saying. I've seen de Ligt a lot. I was lucky enough to see him initially make his debut for Ajax. I then seen him chucked into the Dutch national team at 17 against Bulgaria. They played away. They lost 2-0. He was culpable for 2 goals, was dragged off at half-time. And at the time, I was thinking, there's more experience, better centre-halves to play. Danny Blind didn't have to put him in there. And you feared for him at 17. But then 2 years on now, he's captain of Ajax. Now, listen, I know at times it's about creating a product. You make someone a captain at a young age, it increases his value. Of course it does. But I can see his qualities. I know what he's saying. But likewise, I know where there are weaknesses in his game and that his physicality. He's the type of centre-half that if he has to shift his weight through his hips from one part to the other quickly, he'll struggle. That's the problem he'll have to do. But you can work on that. There's no doubt about that. And I think you look at his physicality and it's probably something similar to Richard Dunn's in terms of their 15, 16 stones, something like that. But the big difference is that Richard could really turn quickly and was quicker than many people thought. But there's a quality about him. There is. The worry would be that even for someone as big as he is, that he did get dominated by a centre forward who is not the most aggressive. I know Llorente can pick up good positions, lean into you, but he doesn't bully centre halves as such. So that was a concern. But then you have to give it some context by saying, listen, he's 19 years old. There's so much improvement still to be made.
How long would it take to get to that level of aggression that may be required, or that level of physicality?
Well, listen, there's a thin line between aggression and people crashing into tackles like a Mustafi, just going for the ball and being dropped, and people just dropping a shoulder and leaving him for dead, all or nothing. What I mean by that physicality is how hard you work for that initial position before the centre forward gets set, before those, say, the fullbacks are just about to get it out of their feet and then hit those big diags. You'd have to done your work in the 2-3 seconds before that to get that early position, to plant your feet, to get your elbows up so you create a cage where the centre forward can't get in, and then you're bumping him that way, or do you take him under the ball? That will come with experience, but it's certainly not getting out in the area of division. He's not coming up against centre forwards that he will do in the Premier League. And I know people will counter that and say, well, listen, he's starring for the Dutch national team alongside Van Dijk, and he is. There's no doubt about it. But even in the games that we've seen up against France, up against Germany, certainly, when he went up against Mane and Gnabry, who played as split strikers and would run from out to in, he struggled then in a way that Kevin's saying, that when those players are suddenly on him, it is very different to the role he has for Ajax, who at times, they play Frankie de Jong at centre-half next to him at times because they know they're so dominant on the ball, they're not going to be attacked. Frankie de Jong's not a centre-half, not in a million years, but that's just a system that Ajax adapt just to get control of the football. So it would be a massive learning curve. There's no way that you'd buy Ligt as an answer to your centre-half problem straight away. If Manchester United took him in, he would not have the impact that Van Dijk had at Liverpool. But there's not to say
Gary, can I ask you there as well, what did you used to do when you played against the type of centre-forward that I was talking about? In our day it would have been someone like a John Hartson, where as the ball's in flight, he wouldn't necessarily even go and try and win the ball. He would immediately look for the centre-half and go and pin him, step back on his toes. What would you do when you were playing against that type of centre-forward?
Well, listen, you'd have had it similar with Noel Quinn, Duncan Ferguson, those type of guys, really robust, Dion Dublins. But, I mean, they're few and far between now as such. But you're right. And for someone for me who's, I don't have the physicality of a Richard Dunn. I had to learn the technique more than going really toe-to-toe with them in terms of just nipping in front of them, stopping them, getting it to their chest, trying to disturb them. Just don't allow them to get set. Because if the likes of John Hartson get set in and around the box, you're in trouble. You're not going to stop him. It would be virtually impossible. And I think the point, Kev, that I really agreed with you in terms of De Ligt. If De Ligt suddenly has to mark a Lacazette and the ball goes into Lacazette and Lacazette backs in and similar to the goal we got against Valencia, he just gets on that quick turn and gets his strike off. De Ligt doesn't have that power yet as a 19-year-old to be able to cope with that. But that can be worked on.
There's a text in here from a listener that says, look at Gomez and Matip, who improved tenfold beside Van Dijk. Surely a 19-year-old with his potential would develop hugely beside him. Sign him up, Jurgen. What do you think of that, Gary?
Well, listen, I've no doubt about his potential. I'm not doubting that one bit. But I wouldn't like to see him go into Liverpool to block the pathway of Gomez. I think Gomez can potentially be something really special. And I agree with Kieran there in terms of talking about value for money. I think Matip coming on a free transfer from Schalke has been a brilliant bit of business. There's no doubt. And listen, any centre-half is going to improve alongside Van Dijk because effectively he does his job and half of yours, really, such is the quality of him. So you're going to look better. Even Lovren, who I'm not the biggest fan of, looks better alongside him. Yeah. But De Ligt will have a massive career. But I do agree with Kev. He's got to make the decision right in terms of where he goes. And I think if I'm looking at him right now, I think probably La Liga suits him better than the Premier League.
Is La Liga, I wonder, a better place in general for a defender to learn? I'd be interested to get your take on this, Kevin, because there's a good piece on the BBC website kind of based on Opta statistics about Manchester City lying bottom of the Premier League when it comes to the amount of tackles they've made. Granted, they have so much possession, so there's a little bit more of an angle to that, but they kind of reminded us of Guardiola's comments in 2016 when he says, I'm not a coach for the tackles, so I don't train the tackles. Is that very much unique to Pep, or is that a league-wide thing at the moment?
Well, it's certainly, it's cross the European leagues. I'd say Gary touched on the Dutch league there. I would say it's probably got a similar sort of style, technique-wise, than it would have La Liga. Much the same that if you went to Portugal, much the same even Germany, where it would be very much, maybe a bit more open and expansive, perhaps maybe in Germany. The Premier League, physicality is the main thing you would need as a centre half. If you take it outside the top six, he's going to go into a top six club, a top four club, isn't he? That's what he would do. If you're talking in terms of learning, Is he going to learn the art of defending, playing in La Liga? I'd probably say no. That's what I would say, because I think in general he'd have to be playing inside. He's going to go to Real Madrid or Barcelona, and that's where he's going to go, where they control the ball, they dominate it. You're going to have to step in. You're going to have to actually be that first line of attack, the first wave of attack, much the same as John Stones has done when people have been critical of John Stones over the last couple of years. It's not just John Stones isn't in the side for how well he defends. Much the same as probably other defenders that play for City. You're in Pep Guardiola's side to start attacks going forward. That's your primary job when you're playing, and that's why he signed centre halves that are extremely good on the ball. So it's not necessarily learning the art of defending in relation to what you're saying there. It's more. It depends what sort of club you're going to go into. If you go and play for Juventus, I think he wouldn't necessarily fit into that type of side because of how they are. The two centre-halves are out-and-out defenders. They love defending, and he'd be a different type of player to that. And I don't think he'd necessarily go into that sort of side. So if he went into PSG, it'd be a different sort of style again, where I think the league would be a breeze for him, wouldn't it? It'd be maybe 4 or 5 games a season where he'd be questioned. He'd be maybe asked to do a job of a certain type, playing against better opposition. So it wouldn't necessarily be the case of going in to learn, but he'd have to learn a different style, playing for a different club. That's what it would be, yeah.
Yeah. You do see as well, when you look at the question whether De Ligt would adapt to the Premier League, that smart players do learn and adapt very quickly. Yeah. Like when Fabinho came in the first few games of Liverpool, a lot of people were going, God, I don't know, what did they see in this guy? And I remember a game, I think it was Arsenal last October in particular, he was floundering. But he learned very quickly, and he's played the centre half this season. He's played centre midfield, he's been outstanding. He's been one of their best players since Christmas. He was really good against Barcelona the other night. We mentioned tackling there. Guardiola not believe in tackling. I haven't seen any midfielder put in as many good tackles as Fabinho in a long time, and he's played right back for Brazil as well, so he's very adaptable. So
but Kieran, on that, sorry, he took an age to make an impact at Liverpool, didn't he? Klopp had to hold him back until he learned how to cope with it.
But when you're saying an age, like it's 3 months. Probably 3 months. I think when you buy a player like that, ultimately the biggest problem Klopp had with him is that he was playing too deep as a midfielder, in on top of centre halves, and he wanted him more advanced. Yeah. But you're right, and I think Kevin was saying about different leagues. If De Ligt went to Serie A and suddenly was with Juventus, he'd get a brilliant education in terms of being a centre half. There's no doubt about it, because the likes of Chiellini, he actually has come out and blamed Guardiola for Italy's woes, because everyone wants to play this expansive style of football. No one wants to learn how to defend anymore. But the very fact is, the Premier League offers you a different challenge week in, week out in terms of how you're playing. The Eredivisie doesn't. Every team in that league plays the same way. So he's playing against the same movements, the same passing patterns, the same runs. And at times, the lower league teams in the Eredivisie are so subservient to PSV, Ajax, Feyenoord, that they don't really even go after him. So it's very comfortable. So as much as it's been a brilliant impact in terms of playing as many football games as he has at a 19-year-old, it's not uncommon in Eredivisie. If you look at all the squads, so many young players are doing it. Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Kieran, don't forget with Fabinho as well, he was left out of the team for such a long time when he first went in, because he had to adapt how Klopp trained. I think that was maybe what he struggled with. Word was that he was actually struggling physically in training every day, and Klopp had to get him to adapt on the training ground before he actually let him play a match for them.
Yeah, that's a fair point, because I always wondered, was that the case with Andy Robertson as well? Because Moreno played most of the first 3 or 4 months, and I wondered, were they getting him up to speed in training before putting him in? Was that the reason? I could not understand it for the life of me that he was getting a nod. Moreno was getting a nod ahead of Robertson, because I've seen him play a couple of times, played really well, but then suddenly you wouldn't see him for 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, but do you remember when Robertson first signed as well? When he first played, he played the first. I think it was the first day of the season, or round about the first couple of games of the season, and there was a criticism. I think it was from Klopp, said he used to cross too early. He didn't want him crossing so deep. So you can imagine when he's playing at Hull, Breeny, like the amount of times he's getting it in deeper areas, and he's just been told, put it in the box, get it into the penalty area, where if he was crossing too early, he was playing for Liverpool, Klopp actually wanted him to get close to the byline, get him around the 18-yard line and beyond that before he was going to put crosses into the penalty area.
Well, you have it. I mean, that makes perfect sense. Liverpool dominate possession midfield, allows a fullback to get into advanced areas. Against Hull, he's never going to be able to get up the pitch. It's something that we see with Matt Doherty for Wolves. They're totally dominant in midfield with Neres and Moutinho. That allows him to get up to those high advanced positions at his own pace, really. He can't do that for Ireland. We don't retain possession well enough for him to do it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point you raised, Kevin, and Kenny Cunningham was talking about this during the week as well, the importance of crossing in this Jurgen Klopp team, because the art of crossing is something that was dismissed as archaic a couple of years ago, particularly under the way Manchester United used to play under Louis van Gaal. Has it gone the other way now entirely after the events of the last few weeks?
Well, I love. There's nothing better that I love of watching sides that play with wide men. And I know Liverpool's fullbacks are essentially the wide man now. Getting into areas and putting crosses into the area, crossing with pace, trying to cross with accuracy as much as possible. I don't think there's any better sight in football when sides move the ball quickly into a wide area, cross in, and a header or whatever it would be, someone that's arriving onto the end of a cross. That's my favourite goal. It always has been from when I was maybe a schoolboy growing up. That was a sort of thing that I would have always practiced on, and that's with Liverpool. That's essentially Liverpool's weapon. They try to play very narrow in midfield. They'll try to maintain possession in midfield, free up widemen very quickly, as in the fullbacks getting forward, and then it's an early cross when the centre halves are trying to get back in position. Man City, I mean, even Arsenal as well. The one thing that we would have always said of the great Arsenal sides growing up. Let them go wide. They will not want to cross the ball because they wanted to try to get you wide. They'd thread it back inside, and it was always a ball that was played down the outside of the centre halves, then a pass back inside that would always create an opening, almost around the penalty spot. That was where they scored a majority of their goals, from right in the middle of the goals, rather from actually getting crosses into the penalty area. So, I mean, the art of crossing has probably never gone away. It's just the style of play that Arsenal, when they took the game forward, they played a different style of football as opposed to Man United. When Man United's best teams that I would imagine, certainly through the 90s, through the 2000s, was always wide areas, crosses into the penalty area, and people attacking between the middle of the goals. Wenger brought a different style to the game, much the same as Pep Guardiola is now. You see a lot of City's goals, you say, from crosses, but it's not necessarily crosses being whipped in. It's more being driven across a 6-yard box with maybe a pass back across goal for a tap-in. That's the way majority of City's goals are. If you're thinking of a stereotypical Pep Guardiola goal, that's how it comes from. So Klopp just plays a different style. That's what it is, and I prefer that style when you're getting wide areas and putting crosses in, or as many crosses as possible into the penalty area.
Gary, is there anything you can do as a centre half when Liverpool are crossing the ball with such efficiency?
Well, listen, as a centre half, I was just thinking there, what Kev was saying is you've got to be honest, and what I mean by that is as soon as Robertson or Alexander get in those advanced areas, knock it past, you've got to retreat to that near post area, wherever you're, that penalty spot, if you're the deeper centre half. Now, in doing so, if they then check back and play into 10, I can't recover. I can't get back in. I'm relying on my midfielders to stay with runners. That's how they work you. And this is the problem that you find as a centre half, is that they really are stretching the pitch that way, Liverpool, in terms of the fullbacks being the high and advanced areas. And suddenly there's space then for that brilliant that triumph of players that they've got. I think if you're asking me, will crosses come back in? I think whoever's winning, whatever's in vogue, the rest of the team start going after it. We've seen it. A team suddenly starts and has success with 5 at the back. You see loads of other teams copy it. Playing out from the back, Guardiola's team, you see loads of teams, whether or not they can do it or not, seems to be irrelevant at times with some coaches. They go, Guardiola does it, so we have to do it. And you have to think, well, listen, you ain't got the players to do it. That's the problem. But listen, crossing is still one of the most effective ways of scoring goals.
Yeah, it certainly is. And playing it out from the back, there's new rules next year, isn't there, that you can actually pass to within your own penalty area, so that might actually get a greater influence once again next year. There's been a huge response via text. You can text us using the number 53106, or you can tweet us as well at Off The Ball. We're going to be putting through some of your questions and some of your comments to Gary and to Kevin next.
Off The Ball on News Talk. Lunchtime Live.
News Talk is knocking on doors and discovering some home truths about the Irish housing market. And as always, I want to hear your stories. So whether you're trying to rent, buy your first home, or stuck in a house that's too small, let me know. Email us now at lunchtimelive@newstalk.com or tweet us at lunchtimeliveNT.
Lunchtime Live with Ciara Kelly. Weekdays from midday on News Talk.
Have a great afternoon with Harvey Norman, the #1 in Ireland for home and kitchen appliances.
Experience the excitement of the GAA this summer with Sky Sports half price for 6 months. The hard knocks.
There's the tackle and there's the turnover.
The relentless pace.
They're coming thick and fast.
Be inside the game with exclusive live matches and expert analysis.
So tough and so skillful.
Catch the unmissable action of the GAA All-Ireland Senior Championship this summer with Sky Sports half price for 6 months.
What a finish to this game!
Search Sky GAA. New Sky Sports customers. Sky TV minimum term and T's and C's apply.
Whatever's on your list, come in and see how much you can save at Lidl. Check out our 3 for €9 mix and match meats like fresh Irish sirloin steaks, fresh Irish diced lamb and fresh Irish chicken breast fillets. And check out our big brand super savers like Lion's Gold Blend Tea, just $2.99, and Cadbury Twin Pot yogurts, only 3 for €2. Lidl, more for you.
This May, your luck could be in with the May €1 million Lotto Plus raffle. Play Lotto Plus tonight for your chance to share an extra €1 million guaranteed. And you could be turning those nightmare wheels into your dream ride. Just ask for Lotto with Lotto Plus. Play responsibly in-app, in-store or at lottery.ie.
At Beacon Hospital, we've once again invested in modern medicine, upgrading our radiotherapy machine to the latest in technology, the Varian Edge. The first and only machine of its kind in Ireland, the Edge offers a non-invasive cancer treatment using extreme precision to target and destroy tumours faster and more effectively. Beacon Hospital, we've got the edge on cancer. Referral required. For more information, visit beaconhospital.ie.
What does your dream home look like? A brand new 3 or 4 bed in the leafy surrounds of Castleknock with easy access to the city and Phoenix Park? Introducing Riverwood Square by Castlethorne, a stunning development of A-rated family homes with prices from just $420,000. Come and see our 3 beautifully designed show homes launching this Saturday, May 18th. Register now at riverwoodsquare.ie or phone Leahy's on 6011 Make it your neck of the woods.
He tears the place apart. He can't remember where he last had them. Needs them for the telly. He lifts up the sofa. Okay. Wow, Barry.
What?
Your glasses, Barry. They're on your head there.
Oh.
Humans are forgetful. So use the M50 Quick Pay app from eFlow to prepay the toll before you set off, or receive reminders to make a payment after your trip. You have enough to be forgetting. Download the M50 Quick Pay app today.
Today and every day, Childline will answer over 1,000 calls and online contacts from children all over Ireland. This week, please support ISPCC's Childline Change Appeal. Help ensure children always have somewhere to turn. Please give what you can in participating retailers, on street, or donate online at ispcc.ie. Your support will help to change the lives of children. Thank you.
Take steps to improve the energy efficiency of your home. Generate as much as 80% of your electricity requirements with solar PV panels from Energlaze. SEAI grants of up to €3,800 also available. Every upgrade you make makes a difference.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
You're very welcome back to Saturday's Off the Ball. It's Eoin and Kieran Cunningham here in studio with Gary Breen and Kevin Kilbane on the line. There's been a big reaction to our football chat so far this afternoon. You can text us using the text number 53106 or tweet us at Off the Ball. Kev, last hour we were talking about Mark Travers and his brilliant start to his Bournemouth career in goals. Rory's been in touch to say it's great to have this talent coming through, although do we only produce goalies and right backs these days?
Well, I think we will hopefully have 1 or 2 more coming through over the next couple of years. Troy Parrott's another one. We're all looking to him without wanting to put too much pressure on him. So I think we've all got to be hopeful that the system that's been put in place over the last 10 or 15 years is going to start producing players, and we're going to start getting them more regularly, I would say. Anyway, certainly playing at the top level. We've not got enough playing at the top level, so Travers doing what he's doing at the moment is great for us all, yeah.
I guess it gives hope in general that if there is a talent in this country, they're at least fulfilling their potential. And I think the Mark Travers situation definitely kind of proves that, the way he was taken from a midfielder and put in goals because coaches here felt that he had that specific set of talents to really make it as a goalkeeper. That's a really encouraging sign, Kevin, if that is the type of coaching that's going on in this country.
Yeah, of course, that is a thing. I was actually watching. There was a few clips of Tottenham training this week before the Champions League game, and I was seeing Hugo Lloris training with outfield players. That would have been unheard of 10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was. It just wouldn't have happened. The goalkeepers would have been just off doing their own stuff with the goalkeeper coach at the start, before the session even started. Perhaps maybe just get involved with a bit of a warm-up, which would have predominantly just been a running type thing. Now, all of a sudden, the keepers are having to be integrated more regularly with the first team squad on the drills that they're doing as well. So, yeah, it's just the way that the game has gone. We know full well that, goalkeepers being decent with the feet has had to change, 20, 30 years ago when the new rule came in, but they've just not had to have been as good as they are now over the last few years, and it is great. It is great. I think the mentality on a coach now of integrating goalkeepers as part of the sessions, it has to be there now, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's also a big reaction to what we've been speaking about in terms of the Champions League as well, Gary. And Shane and Carrick McCross has been in touch to say a big part of the excitement in the Champions League is the away goals. It turns matches into a Russian roulette situation. This will be lost on a regular points-based league, he says. I think the away goals rule has actually taken a bit of a bashing over the last couple of years, Gary. So this is a bit of a different opinion.
Yeah, I half agree with it. I like the away goals, the tension that it seems to bring to the ties. Everything, the whole complexion changes, doesn't it, as such? Yeah. And we're led to believe then that a 0-0 draw at home is actually a good result in the first leg as such, whereas before you're thinking, well, listen, you should be winning your home game. So I like the away goal. I like that. Listen, both Kev and I have been on the end of a horror one of that in terms of that Turkey playoff where we drew 1-1 at home, draw 0-0 away, and we go out of the competition. So, listen, it is gut-wrenching, but I kind of like having that in the Champions League.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like you saw, like the last 15 minutes at Anfield, even though Barcelona weren't particularly threatening because they had Messi, you were thinking, even look, if you got the ball 40 yards and goal because of the away goal, anything could happen. And the same with the way Tottenham finished up. Like, it is kind of the one aspect I think is very unfair is the extra time. If you have extra time in the second leg, away goals still can't double. And I think that's very unfair because the other team haven't had that extra half an hour in a similar situation. But I do think it adds to the tension, the excitement. Like, we wouldn't have had that finish like we had in Amsterdam without the away goals rules.
No, but I'd go with you to say the excitement, but I think deep down with him, I don't think he's right that the away goal still stands, particularly at top-level European football, because of the travel that was incurred years ago, why it was introduced, and how difficult it is to go away from home to get to a ground. It's not that way now, is it? And that's the thing where I think deep down that I personally think it probably should be scrapped, because I think it's unfair on sides when they can play so well. You can see the goal and you're out of the competition. If Liverpool would have gone out to a Messi goal or something like that the other night, you'd have thought that cannot be right under any way, because Liverpool dominated the game for 3/4, if not more, of that game. So as much as the same, it creates so much uncertainty, it creates so much drama. I probably just don't think it's right.
Yeah, it's fair.
Well, you say about the Liverpool game, Ajax have gone out, Kev, haven't they? They've effectively dominated both legs of that semi-final.
Yeah. Was that Ajax's only defeat in this year's Champions League? Did they lose another game? I can't remember offhand.
Good question, you're putting us on the spot there.
Yeah, because both Liverpool and Tottenham...
Real Madrid beat them, didn't they? Real Madrid beat them, I think.
Oh, they did, yeah. Yeah, because Liverpool and Tottenham have both lost 4 games each and got the final, which I doubt if I can't imagine it's ever happened before. No. That even one team has lost 4 even to get to a final. Both teams haven't lost 4s.
For sure. Incredible. It's a huge record. There's also been a bit of reaction to the whole idea of football reform, whether it's in the Champions League, European football, or whatever it may be. And Tony says, hi lads, how about adopting an NFL model for the Premier League? My understanding is the lowest ranked team in any season gets the highest level of funding. Well, they at least get the first pick of the draft, but it automatically wouldn't work in the Premier League because of relegation. You would need to box off a division for this to happen. But funnily enough, that is one of the things that they're thinking about with regards to this European Super League, that it would be squared off. There would be protection from some sort of relegation. Like when you talk about the likes of AC Milan getting back in there, the likes of Arsenal getting into it, there is a protection for these teams. And I guess that's sort of a grim reality as well, though, lads, isn't it?
Well, I think simply can't happen. Sorry, can it? I think that just ruins everything about it. It ruins the very essence of football, in my mind. And I think you're going to take away so much, because It might be great at first that we've got the real elite football that we're watching over a couple of year period. It'll become boring. It'll be a turn off for fans. You know what? I spoke to you when I was getting on the boat yesterday, Owen, didn't I? And the conversation I've been having, I met a Leinster fan. There were so many Leinster fans that were on the boat coming over to England yesterday that I was on. And there was a fella from North Dublin I got talking to, said, look, I've turned to rugby now. I've started, he goes, unheard of where I'm from. He said, simply because, he said, I just can't be bothered with the money that's being ploughed into the game now. It's becoming more, and I've had this conversation so often now with so many different people, that the diving, the play acting, the cheating that's going around in football now, the money that's within the game, this is, in many respects, in my mind, another turn-off to so many people. This cannot happen. It won't be a good thing for football.
But is money not one of the roots of elitism, and is elitism not one of the roots of why this midweek was absolutely incredible, Kev?
Well, do you want it to happen though? And I'd ask you the question though: would you want that to happen? You would want Arsenal in elite football every year? I would say yes, as an Arsenal fan, wouldn't you? But no, it would take away the very essence of what the game's all about. The game has always been about trying to strive to get better and better. All of a sudden, then you'll get so many teams, and it'll be more often than not, you're looking outside those top 4, 6 Premier League sides, or whoever it's going to be that's going to be in the league. They'll be reaching a ceiling every single season. Every single season. You can't say elitism with Ajax and the success story that they've had over the last couple of years to get themselves, or this season, to get them into that position, harshly knocked out in my mind. That's not elitism, that in my mind. That's about building a club up, getting the coaching structure right within the club, so much youth and talent within that side. The side will be dismantled this season. I'm sure of that anyway across the course of this summer. But that's not elitism, is it? With what Ajax have done.
Yeah, but the Champions League is already elite, far more elite than it used to be, even though it's not exclusively champions of countries before. Because if you go back to, like, I remember when Liverpool were winning their European Cups, late 70s, early 80s, and if you look at the teams they beat along the way, like they would play the Northern Ireland champions, say Crusaders, and beat them 8 or 9-0, or the Finnish champions and hammer them out the gate. And all those, the champions of those countries now have been put into the Europa League. You know, it has become far more elite now, but I think you're going to a different level now. I think they have the balance right, whereas, you know, even the likes of a Dundalk or a Cork, whoever wins the League of Ireland, can dream of getting through the qualifying rounds. But if you ring fence it now, like, you know, you don't
look at Red Star Belgrade this season. Red Star Belgrade got themselves into the Champions League. We haven't heard of them in 30 years. When I was a kid growing up, Red Star was such a big side. All of a sudden, what a story that was, them qualifying back into the Champions League. And I want these stories, and I know, I mean, they ended up having a great result against Liverpool overall. I think essentially that's what makes the story of football. It's not just about Champions League or elite. Elite football is what we want to see. We want to see the very best get to finals and semi-finals, and we saw the very best this week. But realistically, do we want that closed shop for football across the board, like a blanket across it all? I personally don't want that. I want these stories to come up. Like, I mean, the story of Dundalk was great because they almost qualified for the Champions League. I mean, that would have been the story in itself, them getting there, and that would have made maybe the League of Ireland a bit more elite, because they would have probably been more dominant for a lot of a longer spell after that because of the finances it would have brought to them. But I don't want it. I certainly don't want that new system that they're talking about in place, because I think it'll ruin football long term.
Yeah, I agree.
A couple of more texts in. Rory's been in touch to say that teams try harder against Liverpool because they're used to City winning and happy to watch Liverpool fail. Could this be because of punditry too? Newcastle efforts last week is a case in point. And Bradley Nolan on Twitter has been in touch to say what you're failing to mention is that the number of ex-Reds in the media puts pressure on the officials. The conspiracy theory is always good, Kev.
Yeah.
Watching it, aren't they? I think as well. I think just watching back and punditry in general puts pressure on officials, because they know full well that they're being scrutinised, and next season they'll probably be scrutinised even more, because if you're disagreeing with the VAR decision next season, then that'll probably put a little bit more pressure on them. I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying one club's going to put more pressure on officials. I just think in general, the media itself puts pressure on officials with the decisions that they make, certainly key decisions that they make and get wrong.
And then, Gary, the final tweet to you, it's from David Mansfield. He says, Manchester United need leaders on that pitch, players with passion. Gary Cahill on a free.
Yeah, and listen, I can see the merit in something like that. But you talk about leaders on the pitch. I'm I still think they need a leader in the dugout. I think I've just not been convinced by Ole Solskjaer. I think, listen, good coach, forward thinking, but I just can't. Every time I look at him, I just think he lacks presence. And if you're talking about creating leadership within your changing room, you've got to shout from the top. And these constant references to Alex Ferguson, listen, the greatest manager in history, of course, but it's just like a tribute act. It's so frustrating to listen to it. And if you're talking about presence, look at Klopp, look at Guardiola, look at Pochettino. That's presence. That's where you're able to dominate your squads, your playing squads, where no player power comes into it, no agent interference comes into any of them squads, and certainly no PR spin comes in as well because of the leadership of those managers.
Kevin, what do you think? Is Solskjaer not the leader in the dugout?
I'd probably go along with that, and I go along. The fact is that I like Pochettino for a reason that and I know that his English isn't great, but I think there seems to me like he seems very sincere in what he's saying, and that's the same with Jurgen Klopp. There's so many managers now that they're insincere, that they don't come across as truthful. It just seems to me like it's a load of waffle, and that is why I think certain managers do struggle. I mean, in terms of Solskjaer, I don't necessarily think it's waffle with him. I think he is quite sincere in what he's saying, but I take the point is he just doesn't look to me like he doesn't come across to me as leader material. And I doubt very much he was that when he was in that Man United dressing room with all those leaders that was around him.
And did you have that sense when he first came into the dressing room, Kev, that he was sort of riding his luck a little bit?
No, I didn't think riding his luck. What was he did what was needed at the time. Stroked a few egos, kissed a few backsides, and that's what got the best out of that group of players initially. That was all that was needed, because you had a manager that was probably being very harsh on them, and they didn't like it. Player power probably ruled ultimately there. And what's going to happen there is, I think at United long term, he's maybe got to try and change the ethic, the work ethic of that dressing room, which I just don't know if he's got that within him. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know what he's saying and doing with the squad day to day. I'm talking about how he comes across, demeanour, body language. Doesn't come across to me as someone that can actually put people down if necessary and hammer them. Whereas I see with Klopp, we see what we see. Everyone seems to like him within the dressing room, whether you're playing or you're not involved. And you see that as well the other night with Pochettino when Tottenham got that winner. Players that were on the bench, players that weren't even in the stand, were going down hugging Pochettino in a way that you can tell there was definitely warmth towards him. Can you imagine that being the case with Mourinho? I don't know, or that type of manager. I don't know, and I think. Do you know what? I mean, I think half of it, sometimes it's a little bit of luck along the way as well. You get that bit of luck, and that's what he had certainly initially on Ole Solskjaer. But it takes a lot more than that long term to seriously get the best out of a squad of players.
Yeah, Kev, because I think that's why I was so surprised they gave him the job before the summer, because you mentioned luck. If he had to pick the fixture list he wanted coming into that job on an interim basis, he would have picked that run that was there. Because that run of wins they had, other than Tottenham, there were all games you would always expect United to win, and then you would generally expect them to beat Tottenham anyway. So, I think probably the PSG win got them through, but we've seen so much of PSG the last few years, you can never trust PSG. So it was no great surprise. And even that night, Buffon made an error that he never makes.
He shouldn't have lost the game, though. PSG were the better side, weren't they?
But that's what I mean. They got the breaks. Like, Buffon made a mistake, and they got the VAR decision that you mightn't get on another night. So too much was read into it, I think. I think he got the job because of that night, and I think the United powers that be did read too much into that result, really.
Even that win at Tottenham, sorry, Kev, I just want to get this. Even that win at Tottenham, I was really impressed with his first half, tactically astute, playing split strikers, really pushing Tottenham back. But then Pochettino, problem solved within the game, changed it round. De Gea made 11 saves. Right. 11 saves in a game. I mean, it's a staggering amount. So I've no doubt about his coaching ability. I think he's a forward-thinking coach. I think he's worked hard. I'd love to see him succeed. But this is a huge job at Manchester United. Bearing in mind, there's no infrastructure around him. There's no sporting director. There's no head of transfers to soften the blows. So let him concentrate solely on the training ground. And even we're hearing it now, like, it's just been announced Lee Congerton's left Celtic to go to Leicester as head of recruitment to try and do. So all the lesser teams in the Premier League are doing it, getting all their infrastructure right. Clearly, Liverpool have done it brilliantly. Manchester City, we know, have done it brilliantly. United are just being left behind.
Yeah, do you know what? As well, I got talking to David Moyes when he hadn't long been in the job there at Man United as well, and he'd gone from his remit at Everton was controlling the team. 90% of it was controlling the team. I'm talking personnel on the pitch. And it was a flip the other way around. He said, all of a sudden you're in here, it's 10% of controlling the team. There's 90% of controlling other elements of the club. And that's maybe what ultimately that he struggled to cope with, I think, initially when he went in there. And that's the difference at United to anyone else. Yeah, what Gary's saying there, he could be the very best coach in the world, and by all accounts, he's a very good coach. But it's not about just coaching the players there at Man United. It's not about that.
Yeah, and a large part of it as well, obviously, lads, is the people you have around you, because we focus so much on managers. But I listened to a very good interview with Klopp yesterday, and it was with a German reporter who's known him for years. But he was talking about his first job at Mainz, and he said, the job I did there, and I would say 20 people did that job at Liverpool. I used to have to do it all, but now there's a huge amount of coaches. There's Michael Edwards, there's the analytics people, there's the medical staff, and look, it's not like he's not doing all the scouting and deciding who they sign anymore. Like, he's been given a list and he has the final say, where a lot of other people have huge influence to it. So, you do look, Mike Phelan is getting the job, but he's not going to be director of football. So a lot depends now who Solskjaer gets in, and Woodward's role in transfers, whether they can get him away from that. So
exactly, like I know Mike Phelan well, and Kev knows Lee Cars, who he was on our coaching course. Mick Phelan, great guy, perfect person when you want around him as a coach. What experience to tap into, no doubt. Obviously, know Michael Carrick from playing with really solid, good guy as well. But how are you headhunting that role of director of football for someone like Rio Ferdinand, ex-players, iconic, brilliant players? But what experience do they have in that world? It's a complete nonsense. It's incredible that they're even entertaining it.
Yeah. Like, it's a huge summer for Manchester United in terms of what they recruit on the pitch. But just touching on that, Gary, and unfortunately we have to wrap up after this, is like, what would your ideal situation be off the pitch in terms of that structure at Manchester United?
Well, listen, everyone's citing what Ajax are doing with the fact that Van der Sar's there, Mark Overmars. But they're not, and then people say, well, they didn't have much experience, but they're going into a club who has a structure in place to keep bringing these ex-players in and succeed, and tell them, listen, this is what you have to learn, this is the remit. Arsenal have never had it. Wenger was reluctant to bring any of those ex-players who at times just wanted to give themselves a job, really, in and around it. United have brought players back to coach. But in terms of that structure, in the boardroom, in transfer dealings, you're going up against some of the sharpest minds in the business world. Just because you're an iconic footballer, that does not mean you can cope. I'm not saying you can't learn it, but you certainly have to go and do an apprenticeship and do it somewhere under an umbrella or around people who have experience of it.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what, just quickly with that, with City as well, Man City implemented that plan probably 10, 12 years ago now. Chelsea did it 15 years ago, a plan of having a director of football above whereas Man United are way behind in that respect. Is it going to take that long for them to get to that level? Liverpool have probably had it now for 8 or 9 years. It's taken them that long to get to the stage they're at now. There's so many clubs, and that's the thing with Arsenal. Wenger had it for such a long time like that. I think it's going to take them that time to get up to the speed with the rest of the clubs because of how long it's taken them to appoint or adopt that sort of policy now. That's the way it is.
Yeah. Listen, Kevin, Gary, thanks a million for joining us this afternoon.
Pleasure.
Cheers lads.
Just a couple of comments to wrap up football for this afternoon. Hi all, I've had a lot less time for professional football/soccer myself since it became a mega money game. Why doesn't the lad Kevin met on the boat support GAA? Genuinely amateur sport. Maybe he does, maybe he just didn't mention it to Kevin. We're talking about elitism when the greatest players come from working class or poverty backgrounds, says another viewer. And then a YouTube comment says, I think the United players were expecting a top manager like Poch to be at the club next season and have down tools because they don't want to play for Ole long term. Which might be an interesting theory that they thought. They really did think that Solskjaer was a stopgap when he did come in. Kieran Cunningham, thanks a million for joining me in studio this afternoon. Just before we go to the break, just to tell you that Off the Ball is heading west very shortly. Join us in Galway with thanks to Jemison Caskmates and Tonic. Next Wednesday the 15th of May, Off the Ball will be hosting an exclusive off-air event. Maura Trasny-Kellig is going to be joined by Galway footballing legends, the Meehan brothers. That's Declan, Michael and Tomas. It's happening in the Dáil Bar, and the only way to enjoy it is to be there on the night. Tickets are are free, but you must register at offtheball.com/events and print off your tickets, or you can also download them onto your phone. This event is for over 18s only. Visit drinkaware.ie. Right, it is Champions Cup final day. It is Leinster against Saracens in a game billed as Game of the Decade. We're going to St James's Park next.
Get up-to-the-minute news updates at newstalk.com and on the Newstalk app.
Whether you love watching big cats in your favourite wildlife show or small cats in funny cat videos, if you watch them on a TV, then you must have a TV licence. It's the law. That's just one of the terms and conditions of life in Ireland. Other terms and conditions may include shedding a tear as a wildlife narrator speaks softly about an endangered wild feline, or crying with laughter as an itty-bitty clever kitty flushes a toilet. No matter what you watch and where, if you don't have a TV licence, you're one crazy cat. So get yours at tvlicence.ie or at any post office. Brought to you by the Government of Ireland.
What makes your beach holiday Travel Republic perfect? A gentle stroll along a golden sandy beach.
And skies made from fluffy pink candy blocks.
Find your perfect beach holiday. From the Algarve to Florida, Lanzarote to Dubai, with prices to suit every budget. Reserve your place in the sun from just €1. Book now at travelrepublic.ie. Terms apply. See site for details.
For great savings on the biggest brands in home appliances, visit Harvey Norman this weekend. Get the Indesit 13-place setting dishwasher for just €259, saving you €60. Or get the Hoover fridge freezer with A+ energy efficiency for just €273, saving you €31. You can even get your new appliance delivered and installed using one of our delivery and installation packages. Visit Harvey Norman in store or online.
Go, Harvey, go! Kickstart a healthier you in 4 weeks with the Sunday Independent Strong for Summer Special, with easy-to-follow workouts, bonus sessions and tips to keep you motivated. Our food plan will boost your energy and strength, plus advice from Catherine Thomas. And don't miss our glossy interiors special, packed with ideas and inspiration. The Sunday Independent, the complete read.
Epic entertainment awaits. Sign up for Air Broadband today and get totally unlimited superfast fibre broadband for just $34.99 a month. Plus the Air Sport Pack free, and all on a simple 12-month contract.